If something's absolutely tip-top in Britain, we say it's the Rolls-Royce of roast dinners, or whatever it might be. But in America, the byword for an ultimate was always a Cadillac. So what would be the Cadillac of American electric cars? Well, this, and it is enormous. It's called the Celestiq, and that's important. Not the Celestiq, as I thought, or the Celestiq. It's Celestiq, and it is quite simply the ultimate, the flagship Cadillac. $340,000 of pure American opulence aimed not at your Mercedes or your Audi, but at Rolls-Royce and Bentley. Maybachs? No, they're too cheap. But it's fascinating to me that when Cadillac came to design its new Ultimate, the company that only sells 2 saloons in its current range versus 5 SUVs didn't do another 4x4, no. It came up with a low-roofed, long-bonneted, lift-back streamliner. Why did they do that? Let's properly dig into the way this thing looks with the design boss behind the Celestiq project, Erin Crossley. After all, it's pretty difficult to get a production car to stay true to the concept. Now, people will be able to see in the background over there, we have the Celestiq concept, so how we originally saw the car. This is effectively the production model. So it hasn't really changed. You've got, I mean, apart from mirrors and different wheel colours, it looks to me, who's not a designer, identical. So you must be pretty proud of the fact that you've kept all of that here.
Yeah, that was definitely the vision. So being able to set the vision with a one-off concept vehicle and really have that serve as the guiding light on the North Star for this project itself. We kept a full-size clay of that concept vehicle in the production studio while we were working on this car. And it gave us a really great blueprint, if you will, to work through with our engineering partners to really be able to discuss the things that were very critical to the design, because it was important to have it be as close as possible.
Normally, when a car goes from concept to reality, the first thing you add is door handles.
Yeah.
You've got no door handles.
Yeah.
So
no
what's
door
going
handles.
on here? How do we get inside to these seats?
Yeah. So similar to the concept, you just push on the B-pillar and the door opens.
And that will happen for the one that you can actually buy. It will open the door for you.
Yes, this is how it will work. On the production vehicle. You know, with the interior, I think a lot of the nod, if you will, from a heritage perspective does center around materials, material selection, material usage, as well as being able to create this one-of-one vehicle that's very specific to the client. So relative to very large color material portfolios.
Yeah, well, no, that's interesting because this isn't someone's washing that's been left hanging up over here. We've got some of your finest leather samples. So what we're doing here in Cadillac House, obviously we're here to look at the car, but this is where people who are actually ordering a Celestiq can come and effectively have a bit of a design day out, right? And they can choose just about anything. What can I make on those machines?
So we have machines in the back that we can use to demo things, to create samples for clients as they're working through their design process. But we have part of Celestiq. Not only is Celestiq a vehicle, but Celestiq, you experience a Celestiq, and part of the client experience is being able to design their one-of-one vehicle. You know, we will only make these vehicles to a client order.
So I suppose I should finish up by saying, what is the optimum spec? How would you have it?
Oh gosh. That's always one of the hardest questions.
Sorry. I started with the hardest question and ended with it as well. But
I have to say personally, I like dark gray vehicles. So actually maybe similar to the concept.
The concept car?
I have never seen a vehicle that didn't look amazing in a dark gray. The real metal aluminum pieces pop from that. The lighting pops. From an interior perspective, I do like a lot of the warmer tones, some of the rich brown, like the kind of brown colors that you picture leather products being in, leather couches, leather handbags, things like that.
I like the sound of this because every Cadillac I've seen when I've been driving here today was black on black with black. Everything's murdered out.
You do a lot of black on black. Yeah.
I'm thinking, it might be time if you're going to have something that's this radical looking to have something a little bit more extrovert to go with.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for talking around us. It's probably not going to be a very common sight near where I live, but
probably not. But hopefully
we'll get to try.
When you see one, you'll definitely it'll definitely turn your head.
I think you're probably right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Overall, it's a massive statement of a car, and that's very Cadillac. Because before the Escalade became the official hip-hop company car and Cadillac design went all edgy, the brand was known to generations past for this kind of thing. Chrome, fins, pink, rocket-shaped tail lamps, jet-set styling. Cadillacs were kitsch. They were preposterous. The epitome of post-war boomtown USA. A decade before man walked on the moon, Cadillac was selling you cars that looks like they could drive your whole family there. And it's that reputation for a little bit of outrageousness mixed in with a throwback to its luxury heyday that the Celestiq wants to electronically swoosh into the 21st century.
But while this thing is brimming with technology that you're going to hear about shortly, the mechanical makeup is kind of not that outrageous. It sits on GM's Ultium platform, which in another life supports the Hummer EV. But here you don't have a double-decker battery, so you make do with a mere 111 kilowatt hours. You have dual motors, 600 horsepower, and it will do 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds, but it's not one of those EVs that's primarily aimed at destroying Lamborghinis in drag races.
Range claims are currently around 300 miles because, like the magnificent Rolls-Royce Spectre, this is a car that doesn't need to drive further than that in a weekend.
Because if they did, owners would use their helicopter to get to where they park their private jet. Speaking of which, I think it's about time that I pressed this button and we had a look at some first-class interior travel. So the first thing we need to do is stop this bonging, and by simply squeezing the brake pedal, look at that. My door is closed for me, just like a Rolls-Royce or a Mercedes EQS. Very nice feature. And then here we have the cabin. There's lots of details that have jumped out at me. I thought I'd point a few out to you. This carbon fibre works really nice. It's got this metal thread running through it, and it just looks more like marquetry than it does a normal carbon fibre weave. Just a nice way of reinterpreting a material that we're all quite familiar with these days. The metal all feels really expensive. There's loads of it on the stalks here, along the vents, steering wheel. That feels really rather high quality. And I just love this design of steering wheel, the 2 spokes, the white with the contrast and the blue is quite kitsch, but it does have that very, very slight 1950s Cadillac heyday vibe, which is great. Look at this grille as well. I've no idea how they make all that, but it's very cool. Like any modern EV, obviously it's got a huge sweep of screens. There's 55 inches of monitor along the dashboard here. Can't really reach it, but it is actually a touchscreen. Interestingly enough, has to be to get the Google certification on there, but the Cadillac designers would rather you didn't touch it and smear fingerprints everywhere, which is something I very much agree with. So you get this lovely multifunction controller click wheel down here with your Cadillac goddess flying proudly. It's a lovely detail, but it's not my favourite. My favourite one is if you open up the cup holders, they've actually engraved into the trim here a Celestiq and then previous ultimate flagship Cadillacs like the 16. It's such a cute and very respectful way of tipping the hat for the Cadillac heritage. Really like that.
And in between getting fingerprints all over the Celestiq, I did have a quick chat with its chief engineer, Tony Roma.
Tony, thank you very much for joining me, the vehicle chief engineer.
That's
right.
Got
that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Good news. So there's no one who knows more about this than you, but you were just saying about how you were first briefed on this 5 years ago.
That's right.
I mean, that's a long time before we knew this thing existed. So can you just take me back to that first, what was it, a meeting, a Zoom call, where they said, we're going to do the ultimate new Cadillac?
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. So I was previously working on a bunch of the other Cadillac sedans, CT4, CT5. We briefly had worked on one of the previous show cars we did. It was called the Escala. And so Cadillac's been trying to do this halo statement vehicle for quite a while, depending on how you count, between 10 and 12 times. And so I was working on the previous generation version of this. It was going to be a 4.2 liter V8 hybrid, and it was going to be a really, really cool car. But 5 years ago is a long time, and that's right about the time Cadillac said, look, we're going to be the first brand at GM to be all electric, and so coming out with a hybrid statement car really didn't make sense. So we said, nope, let's not do that. And I remember Mark Royce and Michael Simcoe kind of walked me over to the studio, and they had a small fiberglass, what the studio would call like a vision model, that was really the purest expression of the new Cadillac design language. And they said, we want to make that. And we started by putting the occupants in space where we wanted them, right? Making sure that people would be comfortable, and taking the elements of the Ultium platform, specifically the cells and the modules and the battery, reconfiguring them. So this is not a flat pack res like a Lyric or anything else. So it's we hollowed out the rear footwell so the rear occupants have the right space. We put battery down the center console to get to the 111 kilowatt hours of capacity. But that first meeting was, here's the pure expression of the Cadillac design language. We want to make this as our statement of what Cadillac stands for these days.
And it seems like a lot of those 5 years have been spent, judging by what you were talking about earlier, on working out ways of producing metal and building and making metal do things that it wouldn't do in nature. You've got casting, forging, 3D printing. Can you just talk about some of the crazy production processes that have gone into this car?
Yeah, for sure. Everything on the interior that's shiny and looks like metal is real metal. Everything from 3D printed stainless steel for the D-ring that the seatbelt goes through on the B-pillar, 3D printed aluminum for the surround around the steering wheel. Some of the parts, like the air outlet that goes across the IP, that's a die casting that we finish and plate. We use large castings to make the entire lower structure of the car to get that flexibility for the battery that I talked about a minute ago. Normally, and this isn't the glamorous part, but normally just to tool a lower structure for an all-new car like this would cost potentially over $100 million just for the tooling of all the stampings and all the weld fixtures and brackets and things you need to weld it together. We tooled the entire lower structure for this car out of 6 large castings that we weld together for about $4 million. Yeah, it's crazy. And that also results in an incredibly stiff lower structure. It gives us a lot of flexibility on how we can machine the parts after we cast them. So I mentioned to you before, if there's a metal forming process anywhere in the world, we pretty much use it. We forge things, we cast them, we machine them from billet, die castings, sand castings, you name it.
There's a lot of people who paid a lot of attention in science class who've worked on this car, isn't there?
Yes.
And then ironically, you're saying about everything that looks like metal inside is metal, but all the bits that a lot of this looks like metal on the outside isn't. So a lot of this orange is actually, these are carbon fiber panels, right?
Yeah, that's right. The outer part of the car, you can't actually see the aluminum structure of the car anywhere on the outside. It's all applied panels. So the doors are fiberglass, sheet mold compound, only because we need the radar to be able to see through the doors. There's an object detection so the door doesn't bump into anything.
So your auto-opening doors aren't going to get dented?
Yeah, that's right.
That's
or dent anything else.
Sure.
And so then there's a bunch of other radars for the autonomous driving features, long-range radars that look through the rear fascia, ones that look out the side for like cross traffic and things like that. So yeah, lots of composite panels on the outside of the car and glass, obviously the whole greenhouse and the roof and everything.
Now I think we should pause the car spinning around there, because you were just talking about the structure and it's hidden underneath, but you kind of paid tribute to it, haven't you? Underneath here you can see a little bit of this car's celebrated structure. So we just pop the trunk?
Yeah, of course.
As you guys are fond of saying. because this is something I've never ever seen in a car before. No seals, no plastic, just what am I looking at here? A huge piece of brushed aluminium?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Or so aluminium?
That's okay.
Let's not do that today.
I speak British, it's okay. So yeah, this graphic standing right here looking into the rear of the car with the 4 freestanding seats, this was one of the kind of the signature design elements, and inverting the seal, we call it. Normally the seal for the hatch or the trunk would be down here, and this would be a painted surface, so we inverted it, we put the seal up here, and made this a beautiful piece of warm formed aluminum. This is the same manufacturing process that the body side is. In fact, the stampings that we use for the body side, we get the frunk surround and this surround basically for free. Every time we make a body side, we get these parts for free, and then we have them, actually they're brushed, they look like they're brushed. It's a pretty cool process. We wanted a really consistent brush pattern on this, and so what we do is we anodize it and then we put it under a laser, and this brush pattern is put in with a laser.
I feel like a lot of the stuff you've just done because it sounds cool.
Perfectly consistent and comes up with this beautiful quality texture every single time, so it's pretty neat process.
I love this. It reminds me of on a supercar when you open up the door sometimes and you can see naked carbon fiber tub.
Yep,
except you've got like just a little nod to your aluminium structure. It's very, very cool detail. Let's just pop that back down there. Keep the lines. There's about 300 patents, isn't there, on this car? Like 300 unique things you've come up with that other manufacturers haven't. Can you give us a flavor of something that is particularly mind-blowing or something you're most proud of?
I can give you what I think is a pretty cool example of one of the patents and how it worked out here, and I think there's more than one in this area. But you'll notice most cars that you see have what we call like either a shark fin or something that is like an antenna farm on top of the roof.
Yeah,
on the roof. And so that was one of the elements. That little chevron in the back there is actually the camera for the mirror. It's not an antenna, and so we've embedded all of the antennas in the glass. Every antenna for 4G, 5G, GPS, everything. They're all embedded in the glass. You can kind of just get a hint if you look right here. You can see the little copper outline of the antenna. And so I forget how many patents there are in that area, but all of the antennas are spread out in the laminated glass around the car. And that's just an example of attention to detail and doing things nobody's ever done before to let us have that nice clean roof line without a, you can imagine the antenna farm we would need with all of the regulations. So the digital radio in the UK or in Europe, and all that stuff is embedded in our glass.
I'm glad you mentioned the fin as well, because of course Cadillac, long history of good fins on cars.
Yeah.
So also, I just want to end on whether or not we think this is this roof the largest glass panel in automotive. Tesla think they've got it on the Cybertruck windshield.
Yeah.
You think you've got it here, but even this, I mean, this is made in Peru.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So that's just one component. Just the curved glass roof is a phenomenal piece of automotive engineering.
Yeah, we had to find a furnace large enough in the world, and there's one furnace in the world that can bend automotive glass to get the shape of the roof we want, and it's in Peru. So the glass is made in Belgium. It's laminated and made as flat sheet stock in Belgium, sent to Peru, molded into the shape, and then sent up to us. And I've heard what Tesla said about their windshield. I'm not sure exactly what their claim is, but I can tell you I had to go looking around the world to find a furnace big enough to make our roof, and there was one. So
we'll have to get the tape measure out and figure it out, won't we? Tony, it was lovely to meet you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Now we've heard from someone with a big brain, I'll round things off with 3 quickfire observations from someone with a small brain.
Well, as you can see, it's very much a 4-seater. You definitely can't have a middle seat in here, but certainly passes the old 6-foot passenger in the back test, doesn't it? Loads of headroom, plenty of legroom to stretch out into, and some very, very posh fold-out tables, because in the back of limousines, people like fold-out tables. To get into the cargo bay, don't go fiddling around down here to unlock it. You just push your Cadillac badge and up comes the lift back. Looks beautiful, but my only concern is, well, the muddy wellies are going to make a real mess in here, and if you brake hard, there's nothing to stop your designer luggage joining you in the front seat. Last one on the concept Celestiq, the door openings were worked touch sensitively, but doesn't really work very well with dirt in the real world app, so they've gone to a button, which I think is a good idea.
It's funny actually, you know, if you were like me getting into cars in the early 2000s, you might remember that Cadillac used to tease us with a lot of very cool concept cars.
There was the 16, which had a 1,000 brake horsepower V16 engine. That was Cadillac's Phantom. And then there was the CN, a supercar with a 7.5 litre, 750 horsepower V12 in the middle. That could have been Cadillac's Enzo.
But sadly, that too was kiboshed. So what might be the best thing about the Celestiq isn't the engraved cars above the cup holder or the goddess flying along on the front wing. It's that for the first time in a long time, they're actually going to make and sell to the public the Cadillac of EVs.